Two movies that are almost the same thing in so many ways. Major crossover films combining many previously seen established characters and elements coming together in a single event. Which one pulls it off better, and how much does Justice League fail?
Yeah. Something is definitely bleeding.
Let's compare and see. The Avengers had an advantage going in having all the Avengers introduced in movies before this one. Hell, 4 out of 6 Avengers literally got a movie dedicated to them before the Avengers was released. Add to it, Black Widow had a significant role in Iron Man 2, and Hawkeye got a cameo in Thor. I think it would be fair to argue that 5 of the 6 were firmly established characters before the Avengers was released. That gives the audience a decent amount of knowledge of who these people are beforehand. Meanwhile, Justice League only managed to do solo movies for Superman and Wonder Woman before Justice League, and a Batman-Superman crossover movie. Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg got cameos in Batman v Superman. That means 3 of the 6 Justice League members were firmly established before the movie. That's a fairly big difference.
Just look at this mysterious extra in the black hat and leather jacket eating something. I don't know about his past or what side he's supposed to be on. Does he have a longtime nemesis? Does he stand with or against Captain America?
But the movies beforehand don't really matter. Exactly how many Marvel movies do you need to watch before the Avengers to get a solid grasp of the characters? The answer is 0. The Avengers actually does a great job setting up all the heroes within itself. You don't need to watch any other movie to enjoy the Avengers. They will just enrich the experience. Justice League, on the other hand, really needs to explain the characters to us because we've spent so little time with everyone besides Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman. And I would argue that outside of Wonder Woman, it's not completely clear that anyone has a clear idea of who any of these characters are going in. Batman is a grim psychopath in Batman v Superman. In Justice League, he's almost a comic relief character.
What are your superpowers again?
I'm rich.
Superman is mopey in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, but in Justice League, he's clearly a much more joyful character. It's like the Zack Snyder Superman died in Batman v Superman, and in Justice League, the Christopher Reeve Superman was revived in his place.
Bad vibrations?
He's just still played by Henry Cavill. As for Flash, Cyborg, and Aquaman, they are all fairly one note. Flash is more comic relief.
He's confused, he doesn't know who he is.
Pet Cemetery.
Cyborg is a super mopey guy. I guess he gets to take over for Superman, while Aquaman is just the guy who goes around and acts like a badass.
On him.
There's almost no nuance here at all. I could easily argue that Hawkeye is criminally underused in the Avengers. For most of the movie, he's just a mind-controlled minion of Loki. But other than that, all the characters are fleshed out with their own reasons for being there on the team and doing what they're doing, even Hawkeye in the end.
I have unfinished business with Loki.
Yeah, get in line.
Justice League feels more like, hey, let's team up because it sounds cool. Technically, they each have their reason for being there, but it feels less genuine and more forced. Less like characters following their path, and more like props moving to the next plot point. The point goes to Marvel.
Put on the suit. Yep.
In the Avengers, we have Loki as the main villain, which is really fairly awesome. Not only was he the main villain in the very first issue of the Avengers, he was also one of the few bright spots in Thor. He is arguably the best MCU villain ever, with only one real serious competition coming very recently. Tom Hiddleston does a great job playing this character, making him feel like a broken man who has just enough menace to feel like a real threat to the Avengers. Justice League has Steppenwolf. What to say about Steppenwolf? Well, do you remember Malekith? If you're saying to yourself yes, then the actual answer is no, because this is actually King Laufey from the first Thor movie. Malekith was the main villain in Thor: The Dark World, and has all the personality and impact of an off-white wall. Well, I can say this about Steppenwolf: he is slightly better than Malekith, which is the comic book movie villain equivalent of being told you're a slightly better actor than Tommy Wiseau.
What a story, Mark.
It's a statement that sounds like it should be a compliment, but in reality, it's just an insult. Steppenwolf is paving the way for his master Darkseid to come to Earth, much like Loki was doing for Thanos. Except where Loki almost seems to have a fun approach to his mission, Steppenwolf just seems to be there. He has a bit of flavor when he tries to tell the Amazons they love him.
You will love me.
But that's about it. He's easily one of the worst comic book movie villains ever. This is an easy point for Marvel.
I said.
These movies both have fairly huge main casts, making very little time for supporting roles. Which one makes the best use of the limited time? In The Avengers, we get Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury, Kobe Smulders' Maria Hill, Clark Gregg's Phil Coulson, Gwyneth Paltrow's Pepper Potts, Paul Bettany's Jarvis, and Stellan Skarsgård's Eric Selvig. In Justice League, we have Jeremy Irons' Alfred, Amy Adams' Lois Lane, J.K. Simmons' Commissioner Gordon, Connie Nielsen's Queen Hippolyta, Diane Lane's Martha Kent, Amber Heard's Mira, Joe Morton's Silas Stone, and Billy Crudup's Henry Allen. Justice League actually has many more supporting characters, and if they were all important characters that couldn't be cut and were integral to the story, that would be fine, but many aren't. J.K. Simmons is a great actor, probably one of the best working today, but why did Warner Brothers pay him to play Gordon in such a minor role where all he does is a quick exposition dump? Could they not think of anything else for him to do? Or perhaps he did more and it was just left on the cutting room floor to meet the studio's 2 hours or less mandate?
Now answer my question. Were you rushing or were you dragging?
I don't. Not.
Jesus fucking Christ! I didn't know they allowed retards into Shaper.
Mira, Silas Stone, and Henry Allen are important to set up Aquaman, Cyborg, and The Flash because the audience doesn't know these versions of the characters yet. It makes sense in the narrative for Hippolyta to be there because the Amazons have one of the mother boxes. Since we're dealing with Superman's resurrection, having Martha Kent there seems logical. Pepper Potts in The Avengers provides a lot of fun for Tony Stark to quip off of, and a sweet moment when he tried to call her when he thinks he's dying. Well, it makes sense that Eric Selvig is there, especially after the post-credit scene in Thor. He is largely relegated to exposition dumping. Overall, I see why these characters are in the movie. At the same time, I could also live without them. They provide some necessary backstory and or character motivation, but none of them are particularly standout. They're just there. I love both Alfred and Jarvis, and they both provide great straight men to the more extreme actions done by their respective superheroes.
Thanks, Alfred, but I'll take it from here.
Do I know you?
Jarvis? You ever hear the tale of Jonah?
I wouldn't consider him a role model.
They honestly both do equally as well in both movies, and thus cancel each other out in this comparison. That leaves us with Nick Fury, Maria Hill, Phil Coulson, and Lois Lane to decide who wins this point. Jackson's Nick Fury is extremely awesome as a man who brings the Avengers together with the idea that they can fight the battles that a single one of them couldn't do. Jackson adds plenty of his own charisma to the role, as he always does, to make the character his.
Well, let me know if Real Power wants a magazine or something.
Maria Hill is largely just a supporting character for Fury. Though he isn't technically an Avenger, it wouldn't be too hard to move him into the hero category and now the supporting camp. However, Smulders' performance gives the character a stoicism that makes her very memorable. As for Lois Lane, the DCE movies have been struggling to find a good use for her outside of Superman's love interest. She ends up on the plane for no real reason in Man of Steel. Then in Batman v Superman, she throws the spear away that just needs to be grabbed later. Both times, the solution to the predicament she found herself in was that Superman needed to save her. Here, they don't even pretend to give her a reason to be there besides being Superman's girlfriend. I guess it's an improvement, but hardly makes her a great character. This is a point for Marvel. And yet, I still haven't gotten to the best supporting character in both these movies, Phil Coulson. The Avengers are set up as largely a group of egos, all knowing that they should work together, yet still giving each other shit and failing to really be a functional team. That is, until Phil Coulson, who is just one of Fury's underlings who pops up throughout the MCU, is brutally murdered by Loki. It's his death that makes the Avengers realize that being a team is more than just hanging out and giving each other shit. It's about seriously working together and respecting each other. Honestly, the Justice League never fully feels like it reaches this point. They do work better together in the end than they do at the beginning, but there's no catalyst for this cooperation. So it just feels like something that happens. For a movie that seems to want to copy the Avengers, it seems to miss some of the most important aspects.
Those cards. They were in Coulson's locker, not in his jacket.
They needed the push.
An evil comes from across the universe to take an ancient MacGuffin box and use it to unleash an army upon the Earth and take over the planet. 6 heroes alone are not strong enough to take on this threat. The only chance they have is if they tackle this situation together. These two movies literally have the same story. Not only that, the same theme as well. The idea that together you are stronger than you are alone.
The idea was to bring together a group of remarkable people. See if they could become something more. See if they could work together when we needed them to fight the battles that we never could.
You want to protect them, you need to work with me.
Strong man as strong as alone. You ever heard that?
That's not a saying. That's the opposite of what the saying is.
It's the same, then again, it's almost a story needed for these crossovers to work. The broad points matter much less than the subtle details. I already addressed the differences in the heroes. Characters matter, and here DC is already at the disadvantage. But how do these stories work towards or against these characters? The reason why Loki attacks is because S.H.I.E.L.D. was conducting experiments with the Tesseract. S.H.I.E.L.D. was conducting these experiments because of the fight Thor had in his movie that showed the world that aliens existed and that we are no match for them. This is a setup that makes sense. The reason why Steppenwolf comes to Earth is because Earth's greatest defender, Superman, is dead. When Superman died, the Mother Box activated, calling down Steppenwolf. Immediately, I have a problem. These Mother Boxes have been on Earth for at least a few thousand years. While Steppenwolf may not know that they are still on Earth, they are literally on the last planet he left him. He could have come for them at any time, but waits for the boxes to summon him, and they wait for Superman to die when he has been on Earth for 30, maybe 40 years max? What about all the other years before Superman was on Earth? Why wait for a Kryptonian to come to Earth and die before you make your move to get the all-powerful Mother Boxes? Meanwhile, Loki steals some iridium for Selvig, presumably so he can make the sky beam that's used at the end of the movie. Loki also, and apparently intentionally, gets himself captured so he can use the Hulk to fight the heroes and distract them from his master plan. It's clunky to say the least. To his credit, Steppenwolf already learned what happens when you mess around before getting to the grand event. His goal is to get all the Mother Boxes and combine them. However, how he gets to the last Mother Box requires the heroes to do the dumbest move possible. They use the Mother Box to resurrect Superman, and then proceed to fight Superman and leave the Mother Box completely unguarded, letting Steppenwolf just take the thing without a fight. Imagine what Infinity War would be like if instead of leaving Scarlet Witch with Vision, they just planned to leave Vision by himself and completely unguarded. Then Thanos disappears and takes the final stone without a fight at all. Well, that's how Justice League treats the last Mother Box. It's taken with so little fanfare, and it should be the big moment when the heroes are at their lowest moment. But instead, they treat it like one of them just accidentally spilt milk on everyone's favorite chair.
The Mother Box. He has the last one.
Wilma, I promise you, whatever scum did this, not one man in this force will rest for 1 minute until he's behind bars. Now let's grab a bite to eat.
Does Avengers have some clunky and less than logical storytelling? Absolutely. Does it compare to the half-assed story put together for Justice League? Not even close. I feel like much of the Justice League script is just the half-written thoughts of a first draft, brought to life in the most expensive way possible. Rather than go over the script again, they said, good enough. What's bizarre is while that's how it seems, it was very publicized how Joss Whedon went over the script at least once. So this thing had at least one rewrite. Doesn't feel like it. Point for Marvel.
Thank you for your cooperation.
Both movies have real standout action scenes. The big moment in Justice League was easily the Superman fight, especially that moment where Superman is watching the Flash. Of course, if we're talking action moments, Avengers has numerous cool moments that show the character's abilities and limits. The Captain America Loki fight at the beginning shows how Cap is clearly the better fighter, but Loki is way too powerful for Cap to really hurt him. Then we see some cool Avenger versus Avenger stuff that answers fans' questions about how the characters compare. Is Iron Man's suit stronger than Thor? Can Thor's hammer break Cap's shield? Is Hulk strong enough to lift Thor's hammer despite definitely not being worthy? And if Loki can beat up Cap, what would happen if Hulk fought Loki?
Puny god.
Avengers definitely wins on the cool moment count. Justice League has a couple moments that are fun, mostly involving Flash, but nothing nearly as memorable. But what about the big action scenes? Well, in Avengers, we get the big New York battle at the end that shows all the Avengers coming together to stop an alien invasion. It has so many fantastic character and action moments. It was even the movie that made the sky being cool and caused other movies to copy it so quickly that it became completely cliche in record time. The most memorable bit in the Justice League final battle is honestly hearing the classic Elfman score pop up. It's not terrible, but it is wildly unmemorable. Point for Marvel.
I have an army. We have a Hulk.
From a visual standpoint, The Avengers is nothing special considering what it is. It was a massive summer tentpole with a massive summer budget. The effects team does an excellent job. The lighting is standard. Joss Whedon, as a visual director, does some cool one-shots, even if they are sometimes fake one-shots, and uses plenty of wide shots to make the action clear. But overall, there's nothing special. It's all rather competent. Not bad by any means, but nothing special. Now with that out of the way, we look at Justice League visually. What a shit show. You can tell the costume design was made for a dark color palette, but since Zack Snyder was kicked off the project and Joss Whedon was brought on, all the colors were brightened. Honestly, the colors should be brighter in a superhero movie, but when you have costumes specifically designed for a darker setup, they end up looking terrible with actual light. The fact that these are all just muscle suits and not the actor's actual muscles stand out incredibly strongly. Justice League loses the point already, just with lighting.
Yeah. Oh, something is definitely bleeding.
But I can't do this and not bring up the horrendous special effects in the movie. The CGI to remove Henry Cavill's mustache is completely obvious. They put so much money into this special effect, and it just looks like one of those fake mouths people put over an actual mouth to have a character say something goofy.
Hey Batman, you want a convertible?
No. Too late.
Cyborg looks like a face copy and pasted onto a body. Steppenwolf looks terrible and is completely bland and unmemorable. And as far as his look, and the very fact that he isn't the worst looking thing in this movie is quite an accomplishment. Not to mention, the constant switch between real locations and the most obvious green screen in the world is a bit distracting. Avengers was nothing special visually, and this was really Justice League's point to lose. And like Hillary Clinton, all they had to do was not suck to win.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
Yet they lost spectacularly. Marvel gets the point.
I think that was meant for you.
We've made it this far, and now the question is no longer whether or not Justice League can win against the Avengers. The question is now, and has been for a couple categories, can Justice League get 1 point on the Avengers? Just one, or will the Avengers clean sweep this versus? These are big budget comic book movies, so the sound design department should be top notch. Now considering how much of Justice League is half-assed, this isn't necessarily a given, but it's fine here. Both Avengers and Justice League on a basic sound level work. That leaves us looking at the scores. Avengers has Alan Silvestri, best known for his iconic work on Back to the Future.
What did I tell you?
but Justice League has Danny Elfman, best known for his iconic work on a solid half dozen or so movies, including the 2 Tim Burton Batman films, the first 2 Spider-Man films. On paper, it's not clear who would come out on top, but given their histories, I would give an edge to Justice League given Elfman's successes, especially in this genre. And Elfman does some cool work. He makes great use of the past themes of the characters. We get the Wonder Woman theme from Batman v Superman, we get the Man of Steel theme,
This is amazing.
we even get hintings of the John Williams Superman theme from the Christopher Reeve Richard Donner film.
But I'm also a big fan of Justice.
And the Batman theme by Elfman himself in 1989. Those are great themes. But their problem here is that they don't make me think of Justice League. They make me think of better superhero movies I could be watching instead. My big issue is that Justice League has not a single note that is memorable on its own. The most memorable music for Justice League is that sample from the trailer. But guess what? It's not original music or score, and it's not even Elfman. That's the Beatles. Well, a Beatles cover, but it's bad when a movie has absolutely no music of its own that is remotely memorable. The most memorable part of the score is the scores of past movies. But at least DC has memorable themes to call back on. The Marvel movie scores in Phase 1 are not bad, but they're hardly memorable. That means if Silvestri wants to make a solid score, he can't rely on callbacks. He has to come up with a memorable theme for the Avengers. And he did. That 30 seconds is the best piece of music made for either of these movies, and gives Marvel the final point in a clean sweep against Justice League. Not surprisingly, Marvel wins. Honestly, would have been tough for it to be anything else. I do feel like if we would have gotten a true Zack Snyder movie, maybe one of these points would go to Justice League, probably visuals. But by having Joss Whedon go over and essentially make Justice League more like the Avengers, Warner Brothers ensured that Justice League would be nothing but a pale imitation of the Avengers. While I would never go so far as to call Justice League a good movie, I don't hate it, and it is infinitely more watchable than the bore fest known as Batman v Superman. While Snyder probably would have made a more visually interesting movie, it's also almost certainly will have been a lot more boring and entirely too serious. Justice League bounces between genuinely good moments and so bad they're good moments, whereas the Avengers is pretty much just good moments in a good movie. It's an easy win for Marvel.
People are a little slow. I'll try to keep up. Can I keep this?
Hey, if you like this video, please make sure to hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe. That helps me out a lot. And if you really love this video, consider visiting my Patreon page.